Today's presentation is all about milieutherapy. And so we're going to kind of dive into that, look at what it might be, how you might define it, and then we'll go from there. But before we dive in, I do want to give you just a brief overview of Alliance Behavioral Care. That is my main, if you will, my 9 to 5, which, as you know, in our field, the 9 to 5 is really a 24/7. And so that's what our like my main job is. And what we do is we have homes, actual houses within the valley, and each house has 10 clients that are living there and working on becoming more and more independent. And the entire goal of behavioral health residential facilities are to increase independence to the point that the client can step down and live in the least restrictive environment possible. So to do this, we have 24/7 staff that are constantly assisting the client by modeling, prompting, encouraging, redirecting, anything they can to help the client gain and earn those skills. And we'll talk more about skills later, but that is kind of like one of the big facets of the agency. We do accept all access plans and most all tech plans. And before the COVID pandemic hit, I was actually doing trainings and different meetings within the hospitals so that we could let everyone kind of know what we do and what to expect. A good 24-hour is meant to help clients step down. That's absolutely our goal, and that's what we'd like to see happen. And so that is what we are working for. All right, so as clinicians and individuals working with clients or patients, I'm going to use clients for this training, but if you want to call them patients, that's cool too. But we have the ability to be an agent of change, for change. We know that relationships are the foundation of every successful therapeutic intervention. And the milieu therapy is all about recognizing how our relationships with others affect both the outcomes and the overall results at all levels, whether that be individual, collective, even a business standpoint. All right, here we go. There we go. So here are our main goals for today. As we go through each area, you'll notice one theme that continually stands out, and it's the title of this presentation: intentionality in interaction. So first and foremost, what is milieu therapy? Did you know that milieu actually means middle in French? So in an attempt to make sure I do not mispronounce it one more time, we'll just call it MT moving forward, okay? In fact, in scholarly research, you'll find it abbreviated as MT. So either clinicians and social workers really like acronyms, or no one can agree on how to pronounce it. So either way, we're going to go with MT. So first and foremost, we'll look at what it is and how we can create an MT environment. Second, we'll look at the differences between MT in both an inpatient and outpatient setting, and a few in between. Third, we'll look at skill transfer, basic general overview as to how skills are acquired and then transferred both in the environment and out. And just kind of a tagline on this, imagine this, if in our 24-hour setting, what if we gave the clients everything? So the staff take them their meds, the staff make them food and take it to them, the staff cleans the house, the staff does everything. Then we're not actually teaching them a skill that they would need to step down and care. And so that's why the entire 24-hour setting is geared to help them learn and obtain independent living skills and improve the activity of daily living so that they can absolutely step down and care. So we're going to talk about skill transfer. Number 4, we are teachers. I know. We're counselors, social workers, school counselors, clinicians, directors, but we're also teachers. And learning to embrace that will help bring awareness to our everyday interactions. So every moment is a teachable moment, and our clients observe every action, whether we know it or not. And we get to provide teaching in those moments. Number 5, we'll talk about cultural change. Culture change occurs when the MT is effectively applied. Individuals find purpose in an MT environment, helping to continue the flow. Our teachable moments are found in culture change as well. So as we are observed by those that we work with and those that work for us. And last but not least, we'll definitely have time for questions. I cannot see the chat box right now, and so I know they'll give me questions as you guys bring them in. But definitely place them in there. I'll do my best to answer them all. But I'll also leave my contact info on the last slide. You can definitely outreach me if you'd like to. All right, ready? Let's jump in. What is milieu therapy, MT? Understanding it and how to create it. Wherever there is a human in need, there is an opportunity for kindness and to make a difference. I often think of MT as this. It's an opportunity for kindness, for connection, a chance to make a difference in what could be like the most subtle of ways, but has such a huge impact. Generally speaking, MT refers to the treatment of people in intentionally designed physical and interactive environments where commonplace actions around a range of everyday events provide opportunities to promote positive change. This is in a study, and we're going to reference the study a lot. But MT is a commonly used term, most notably in inpatient settings. So those of you that work in inpatient, you're probably thinking, I see this all the time. Absolutely. It's most common in the inpatient setting, but also in settings where group interactions occur. So think residential treatment, group homes, group activities in the clinics. In a way, MT is ambiguous though. How we define an environment, especially like one that is constantly changing and ebbing and flowing, the definition itself has to be fluid. MT is essentially what happens between specific interventions. Is it possible that even in scheduled time, that milieu can exist? Yes, absolutely. So according to an ethnographic study that was done by Smith and Smitsmuller, individuals in contemporary mental health organizations reported that everything in the physical and social milieu has the potential to affect therapeutic change. And the milieu itself functions as a therapeutic change. For example, in an inpatient setting, groups might run every hour with specific interventions for therapeutic change. However, at 12 p.m., the lunch break is issued and all of the clients remain together, engaging in yet another activity with one another. But of course, the staff are still present. In this hour, it lies within the MT environment, the time between the structured specific interventions. And while it may seem to be like free time, therapeutic change can still occur. Improvisation, connection, communication, all of these can happen in seemingly routine lunch hours. But how? We'll take a look at the necessary components that create the MT environment and then dig a little deeper about how we might affect it as well. According to Fritcher and Dr. Sussman, there are 4 components that make up the MT environment. And the first is support. Support in an MT environment is where clients feel safe to express themselves and participate without fear of rejection. How often has a client stopped us to ask us a question, and for whatever reason, we are just kind of ushering them back to staff, telling staff to handle it without really addressing the client's need? Even though the staff member might be better suited to assist the client, our dismissal can often lead to the client feeling less supported in the actual environment. In an effective MT environment, though, taking the extra time to hear the client's request, then walking with them to the staff member and sharing their concern reinforces the supportive environment. Within the environment, there has to be structure. It's key. Now, this is not just a daily schedule of events, but how the events are scheduled together. For example, in our residential facility, we are mindful to link groups and activities together that will bring about the most skill acquisition. A morning group on budgeting for wants versus needs might be followed by client shopping, giving the client a chance to use the skill they just acquired. So structure allows the client to learn and implement a skill and a behavior change in a structure where they would then know and understand how to do it in the community. For example, let's say my client has $20. The first thing the client's going to tell me they want is cigarettes, right? They want and they need cigarettes. And so they decide cigarettes are in need and a want is a phone card. Then the clients go shopping, and while they're there, they buy their cigarettes, and with the leftover money, they decide that they're going to buy candy, soda, and whatever else they may want. In that moment, staff is able to bring the milieu into the store and to say, hey, remember when we were doing budgeting this morning, you mentioned that you needed cigarettes, but you wanted a phone card. Let's talk about that. Are we following the needs and wants? Are we following the budget you set? And now the client may definitely say, I don't need to talk to anyone on the phone. I do need candy. So we're going to make it work this way. And that's okay. But the point is that we've taken something from one environment and transferred it into the community. So then later, when the client's no longer with staff or they've stepped down in care and they go to the store, maybe they'll remember that conversation, they'll remember that skill. By structuring the groups and activities in such a way, we allow for the milieu itself to transfer from site to the community. And ultimately, we want skills to transfer. So along with structure comes consistency. If clients do not know when to expect certain tasks, groups, staff, etc., the lack of consistency can create disruption in the MT environment. Sure, things change. We know that. Staff call off, therapists are sick, like things happen that cause change. But generally, having some consistency will help each individual to also feel a sense of personal control. For example, if I'm a client and I know that groups are always run at my clinic every day, 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 3 p.m., I can count on that consistency and take control of my own participation and involvement in the groups. If groups are suddenly canceled, or the therapist is 15 minutes late, or group members are allowed to cross boundaries and engage in side talk, I might feel less inclined to participate simply because I don't feel the control and the consistency. And fourth, in a successful MT environment, there is a sense of cohesion. The cohesion exists between the staff with the staff with the clients, and the clients with the clients. Essentially, the very environment encourages togetherness. One of the biggest concerns in residential treatment is that some clients are prone to isolate. They come on site, they have their own room, or even they have a roommate, and because they're like living where they're doing treatment, sometimes they want to isolate. So in an effective MT environment, staff are going to work to encourage that client's participation, both with staff and peers, and through activities of daily living and group interactions. Consider group therapy. If I'm facilitating a group at my community mental health center, and I know all 10 clients that come to my group session, then there are 10 relationships at play, my relationship with each of the 10 clients. If group therapy is spent with me making individual connections to those 10 clients, it is much less effective. But if the clients were to somehow connect, it would be more effective. As therapists, we hold the key to that interaction. So we have the ability to promote and encourage connection between the members. So rather than 10 relationships, we actually have 100 relationships in every interaction. That's how we create cohesion within a group. Of course, there are challenges. The first and the biggest challenge is absolutely the fact that it's a fluid definition. But other challenges, admissions, discharges, the milieu is going to shift. In fact, one of my sites, we have 10 women that live there. It's a co-occurring site, which means it's for both SMI and substance abuse. I brought the last client into that site at the beginning of COVID. And so they've all been together cohesively for about a year, doing incredibly well, working the steps of recovery and just doing well. In fact, their cohesion was so great that at Christmas time, they bought each other gifts. Like it was the coolest thing to see. Like their cohesion was so strong and like so positively rooted in each other's success. But one of the clients discharged a couple of weeks ago. She graduated to a lower level of care, which is awesome. But bringing in a new client is going to disrupt the milieu for a second. It's going to change things around. There's going to have to be some shifts and some changes, not only on the client's behalf, but on the house's behalf. And milieu is intended to shift and change. So the goal, of course, is to create that environment that can transfer. All right, inpatient versus outpatient. Those of you that work in inpatient settings, you understand the importance of structure in the environment. Oftentimes, client stays are scheduled out from as early as 7 a.m. wake time to 10 p.m. lights out. There's a focus on the hour-by-hour work, and free time is actually scheduled in as well. The structure is meant to help individuals transfer these skills to an environment outside the hospital where they can then maintain a daily routine of medication compliance, independence in their ILSs and ADLs, and of course, engagement in community programs or work. Take a look at this. This is an inpatient sample day schedule. This is out on the East Coast. They let their clients wake up pretty late. So 8:30 in the morning, it looks like there's breakfast out there. So this is from Walden Psychiatric Care in Massachusetts. And we can see like a specific structure of it from 8 in the morning all the way to 9 o'clock at night. In a way, we can easily see support, structure, and consistency that are all present. But what about the cohesion piece? Because that part's important as well. Do we see any ways in which the individuals can be together, creating a learning environment together? Notice the goals group at 9:15 in the morning. That would be a fantastic opportunity to encourage clients to take ownership of not only their treatment, but their role within the inpatient setting and with one another. Therapeutic games and of course the milieu activity group are also great ways to structure a milieu into the environment. But I'm going to question a little bit more. There we go. With a schedule such as this, can MT occur around the clock? Why or why not? I'm going to suggest yes. So for example, every minute of this day is almost accounted for. Yet there are other times that the milieu could be at play as well. So there's a walk on here at 11 a.m. in the morning. There's a walk with fresh air. What if the walk outside was intentional? So the BHT that's leading the walk encourages clients to talk about the gratitude for the day. And maybe even the BHT starts. So the BHT says, today I'm grateful for this. And then he calls on somebody else in the group. The client then shares, oh, I'm grateful for this. And then the BHT encourages the client to call on another client. Once that client shares, then he or she calls on another and so on and so forth. And there's a moment of cohesion as the clients share about their own gratitude. It's a vulnerable moment of sharing. But it all starts because a BHT chose to role model something. And that's where the MT, the milieu, is able to enter. On the outpatient side, there's a lot of different outpatient settings. I'm going to list a few, but more for the space. This is not an exhaustive list. Much like the inpatient setting, outpatient settings have the ability to create support, structure, consistency, and cohesion. And while it may not look like a 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. schedule, these opportunities also create the MT environment. So here's some options here. Community mental health. It's different everywhere in the US, but clinics, therapy offices, private mental health offices, day programs, sheltered work programs, 24-hour BHRF placements. That's like what I work in. And yes, the acronym is 24-hour BARF. That is definitely the acronym. Flex care placements, which may or may not include staff around up to 23 hours a day, all the way down to less than 8. And then independent support living with wrap services. Wrap supports are going to be additional skills that come in and kind of wrap the client in support. Think home health that helps the client grocery shop. Some of the areas of focus in an outpatient setting, though, might be as follows. Peer support. In clinics and community mental health, this individual works for the agency, and likely the same one that they too receive treatment at. They work there as a support to a client. Peer supports may attend appointments, provide support in group therapy and group activities. They also might be recovery coaches. Those are individuals that have gone through the process of recovery from a substance and also want to assist others in obtaining and maintaining sobriety. Peer supports are a great form of role modeling. For example, I have an individual that really struggles to get into a cab on her own. And so the peer support specialist will sometimes do a ride along. So they'll ride into the cab to the house, they'll get the client, and together they go to the appointment. Community support and case management. These individuals often aid in ensuring clients attend their appointments, remain medication compliant, and can ultimately be a broker of resources that keep clients connected and engaged. Things like voc rehab, counseling referrals, groups and activities. Case management and community support are actually what get clients into residential facilities as well. Remedial education and psychoeducational groups. These might be groups that are run to educate clients on diagnoses, treatment approaches, and then of course, positive coping skills for the behavior change that we're hoping for. Social learning. At its basis, MT is social learning. So according to Dr. Zayed in an article this last year, social learning includes teaching interpersonal and functioning skills important for a socialized living. This is one of the areas I believe like MT environments can really thrive. Just as you and I have interpersonal and functioning skills, so do our clients. And many of the day-to-day skills can be taught in this way. We're going to talk more about skill transfer later, but social learning just really encapsulates role model in the teaching of new skills. And lastly, ILS and ADLs, the independent living skills and the activities of daily living. Depending on the setting, these may or may not be focused on. So for example, in residential, we're absolutely focusing on these all day long. We're having specific groups that focus on them. We run hygiene groups, we run groups on budgeting, so on and so forth. But you might not find that at, say, like a private therapy office. That doesn't mean that the milieu cannot be found in those spots as well. So one of my favorite ADLs is cooking. I think it's like one of the most fun things in the world. And so in our facilities, we actually have a rotating menu, and it allows our clients how to cook multiple new meals. There are 3 meals a day plus substitutions. And so we rotate through each week, so multiple meals, and we teach our clients how to cook these meals, not only for themselves, but for others. This is a skill that's absolutely necessary to have to be able to live in a less restrictive environment. So it's making it a skill that would transfer. Plus it's fun. So that leads us to our third point, skill transfer. Just as it sounds, skill transfer is the means in which a skill is obtained, retained, and then transferred into a new environment. This is going to be like a super general overview of how skills are obtained and then transferred. But first things first, there's an observation. Client observes the staff and or even a peer interaction, including emotional, cognitive, and behavioral responses within these said interactions. The client then emulates and or mimics either the staff or the peer, attempting to either obtain the same or a different outcome. Staff, and even sometimes peers, provide correction, guidance, and support. This is where we enter the milieu. The client is encouraged to practice the new skill until he or she feels they have acquired it. And then, of course, they're able to transfer the skill to the outside world. Going back to that study by Smith and Smitsmuller, they were interviewing a UHL while we were sharing stuff, some of my staff, some of my management was on their phone. And at first I was like, what are they doing? Like, they're so disengaged. And then I wondered, could their disengagement be an exaggeration of my disengagement from the first half? Without context, they might have thought that I was like scrolling Twitter or texting friends. Maybe in a way I taught them that that behavior was okay. So with that in mind, like, how might I be more engaged next time? How could I change behavior? What if I walked into my meeting and I took my cell phone and I put it down on the table, face down, and I didn't touch it? Would the people that I'm working with do the same thing? Would they emulate that behavior? Because that's the new behavior. I'm going to give you 3 examples of how every moment is a teachable moment and every action an observable action. As Fritcher and Dr. Sussman shared, people learn healthy patterns of living through constant exposure to role models. So this is the part of the training where we're going to shift our focus a little bit inward. You and I play very big roles in creating an MT environment, whether we recognize it or not. We have the ability to be intentional in our interactions. Things that we may assume are super subtle may not be at all. And to those that are observing our behaviors, actions, and responses, they might be really big. Every interaction can absolutely be intentional. So here's an outpatient therapy example for you. I'm the therapist, and I arrive at 8:50 in the morning for my 9 a.m. client. So I arrive early. In the time that I get there, I'm able to open up my office, get things ready, get stuff ready for the day, have my notebook ready, whatever it is I need to do to set up. And then, I don't know, daylight savings hits in Arizona, but anywhere else. And suddenly, like, I'm struggling to get there before 9. So now I'm showing up at 9 and I'm actually unlocking my office with my client. We're doing it together now. And then one day I hit traffic and it's horrible. So I don't show up until 9:05. And at that time, I apologize to the client. I'm so sorry. Traffic was horrible today. I'm not sure what's up with that. But then over the next few weeks, it still happens. 9:05, 9:05, 9:05. Until one day, the client shows up at 9:10. And in that moment, I go, wait, hold up. Like, what's happening? Like, obviously, we need the whole hour of therapy. So why is my client showing up at 9:10? This significantly delays our therapy time. This is where, in order to create change, we have to be intentional and understand that we're the agent of change. The delay of our therapy session is largely in part to me not arriving on time and then allowing it to continue that way. So the only way to change this behavior is not to, accost the client for being late, but rather to say, hey, you know what? Man, I am so sorry. I normally show up at 8:50 so that I can get our office open and get ready for this session with you that I have at 9. And I noticed over the past few weeks, I was struggling to kind of beat the traffic here. And I take full responsibility for that. I own that. I'm gonna make some changes and I'm gonna be back here at 8:50 so we can definitely start at 9 a.m. I guarantee you, taking accountability, taking responsibility, and understanding that you're the agent of change is ultimately going to shift that entire session with that client. And you just role modeled so many things. You role modeled accountability, responsibility, how to be prompt, that things matter. All right, a second example. This is a real example that occurred a couple of weeks ago at one of my sites. I have a client who is often in crisis and often goes inpatient. And then, excuse me, once she's inpatient, she'll like call the house and be like, oh, I know you guys are going like client shopping today. So please make sure you get me my favorite crackers. And like, I can't wait to be back to have my soda, all of that. And so we understand that the crises are often behavioral. And so I showed up on site and the therapist on site was in a session. And so I sat down at the island, the kitchen island's huge, it's gorgeous. So I'm sitting there, I'm interacting with one of the house managers, I'm interacting with a couple of clients and a different BHT on staff. They get out of their session and the student comes to me and lets me know, oh, there's a crisis. The client wants to go inpatient. And I'm like, what's going on? What's the problem? She doesn't feel safe. She doesn't want to be here. Okay. So then the client, totally downtrodden, walks over to me at the island and she says, I want to go to the hospital. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me what's going on. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. They accuse me of things. I don't want to be here. Okay. And I said, are you in immediate danger to hurting yourself? She thought about it for a second. And she goes, if I don't leave here, I will be. Okay, that's fair. So I have a question for you. What if I told you that we could call your case manager and ask them to consider transferring you to a different 24-hour site? Do you think you would be safe then? Complete affect change. She's now happy. And she says, yes, absolutely. I can totally be safe as long as I know I get to move out of here. Wonderful. At this point, I've engaged her. I've gotten her to agree and totally commit to safety. And the crisis has been averted. So now we start to focus on the desired outcome. I want her to be safe. That's the desired outcome. But I also want her to engage in a coping skill. So I ask her, talk to me about your coping skills. What do you like to do when you're not feeling great or you're feeling upset? And she tells me. I am obsessed with the Twilight series. And I said, oh, for real? Do you have the books? You read them? And she's like, yeah, I read them all the time. And then she says, what about you? Do you like Twilight? So this is going to be the part of the training that you're going to either forget or you're not going to judge me for. But yes, I love Twilight. So vulnerably, I tell her, oh, not only do I love Twilight, like that is what got me through grad school. And I love the books. I'm so glad you're reading them. I just created an authentic connection with this client. Yes, I'm slightly ashamed to admit that I love those books, but I did. And so like I have this authentic connection with the client. The crisis has been averted. She's engaged with me on a much more authentic level. And I'm going to get the positive results I want. So I ask her, hey, do you think that you could read? Like, do you think you could do that right now? And would you be successful in doing so? And she says, absolutely. So we break and she goes off to her room and she reads. And a little bit of time passes and she comes back to the office and shows me new books that have come out since, 2009 or whatever. And she is reading them and she's so excited. She wants me to consider reading them. And of course I'll read them. Why not? And so I asked her at that point, and so you not only have the 4 books, you have these 2 books, which you haven't read yet. Do you think that when you get to your new place, you'll continue reading? Absolutely. So then in that moment, I'm like, okay. So basically what you're telling me is books are a fantastic distraction for you and a really good coping skill. She agreed. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. So we just implemented a skill she already had. I provided guidance, correction, support. And now she's like solidified her confidence in a skill. That's going to transfer no matter where she's at. All right, one more example for you. This is going to be an inpatient example with an interactive BHT. I love when I, pre-COVID, would get to go into the inpatient units and see some of the BHTs like really at play. There's some cool interactions that I've seen. So for this guy, he arrives on shift. And the first thing he does is he spends the entire shift interacting with all the clients. He's super engaged. He's trying to get them to do groups. He's trying to get them to do activities. He's like making a fun thing about taking showers. It's exciting. His energy is contagious. The client engagement is evident throughout the day. And because of this, the client outcomes improve. Simply put, the client wants to emulate his behavior. They too want to be interactive, helpful, positive, communicative. It can be an entire shift for that client alone. All right, everything we do is perceived, is observable, is modeling, and is emulated at some time. So how different might your day look if you were aware of how you were being perceived? Would it shift? How different might your client care look if you made sure to be intentional in all of those in between and all of those milieu moments, knowing that others were also observing your interactions? And are you open to helping your clients by intentionally working through the environment to maximize the therapeutic potential? Think about your day to day, or maybe even 30 minutes before we started the seminar. What were you doing? Were you modeling the use of any skills? Were you modeling the use of any coping mechanisms? Which ones? If you were able to like relive those moments, those 30 minutes before, do you think you could find some intentionality in the interactions that you had? Or could you implement some? I'm gonna guess yes. I know you're all on mute, but I'm gonna guess yes. All right, culture change. So how intentional interactions can actually shift a staff. So think BHTs, the culture. When asked to define milieu therapy, the workers and directors at one of UHS's hospitals noted that MT was a quote, ethos, or a set of principles that guide practice rather than a specific list of discrete interventions. And according to the article that we've referenced before, Smith and Spitzmuller, ethos implies a culturally based way of viewing the world. If you just Google search ethos, it'll take you to the dictionary and it yields this result. the characteristic spirit of a culture, era, or community as manifested in its beliefs and aspirations. The most effective MT environments embrace the idea of ethos, creating a culture that is bought into not only by clients, but by staff of all levels. I love this quote. Again, referencing the workers. Workers were not only aware of the importance of the social environment in shaping their clients' affect and behavior, but understood themselves to be helping their clients by working through the environment to maximize the therapeutic potential. When I work with our intern students, those that are aspiring to become therapists, one of the worries most often vocalized is, how do I even know if I'm helping my clients? How do I even know that I'm making a difference? I think this is innate. As clinicians, we want to be helpful. And if we can create a successful MT environment, we will learn to understand that we actually are helping. We're so intentional in every single interaction that we're creating a total shift and a change. We are helping. Think of where you work right now, wherever that may be. Are you bought in to the culture you've created for your clients? If you're in leadership, like myself, do you see the staff below you bought in? What about the clients? Are they bought in? Is there an ethos that shows others are manifested in the actual beliefs and values that your work or that your agency has? And if you answered no to any of those questions, how might you be an agent of change to shift the culture? Let's revisit the example where I talked to you about the client and her deep love for the Twilight books, and my deep love, I suppose. In that moment, I was directly interacting with the client, but within the milieu. So I wasn't providing therapy in that moment, like a therapy session. I was just doing milieu. But while doing so, it happened to be shift change. And so the 3 p.m. shift came on, checked herself in, did all her stuff, and then came over immediately because she wanted to see what we were talking about. That's a big cultural thing, to feel comfortable walking over to where one of the directors is having a conversation and to join in, to interject into that. That's a comfort. That talks about the cohesion. It's awesome. So in that moment, she came over. She wants to know what we're talking about. The client explains to her, oh, I was feeling this way, but I'm gonna work on reading my books, and we're gonna work together to help me go to a different placement. I'm gonna stay safe. I know I can do it. She observed me, the staff member observed me, modeling the use of coping skills and de-escalation. And then she then engaged in the client further. It was almost like a handoff from me to her. And she was encouraging continued connection, continued interaction. In the future, when I'm not there, if the client were to express the same concerns, I would almost bet that the staff member would be able to effectively de-escalate and again, redirect her to her coping skill of reading. Staff sees how we interact with clients, as well as how we interact with them. Are we including those that work for us in the ethos we want to create? Are we modeling appropriate skills, completely aware of their observation? That's it, guys. We made it. So when I decided on this training topic, I was excited to share about something that has seemed so like second nature for myself and those I work with. And as I started researching it, I learned that it was much less defined as I had thought. And my working definition had to be open, flexible, and completely understanding, which ironically is much like the milieu itself. So I hope you have enjoyed this training and that you'll look for ways to be intentional in every interaction you're in. A few key takeaways before we hit the questions. Let me see here. There we go. Milieu consists of the in-between moments as well as the structured moments. Remember, it literally means the middle. Milieu settings can look different, or milieu can look different between the settings. Skills can absolutely be acquired and transferred. And every moment is a teachable moment, every action observable. And finally, milieu can shift culture as well, creating positive change that ultimately benefits staff and clients. get through this really quick so you can see this other slide. This would be my contact information if you need it. And let me see if I can open this. Oh, I can. Give me 2 seconds to figure out how to move this chat box and then I can look at it. Oh my gosh. Ah, now I can see the chat box. Wonderful. Okay. Okay, trying to look. Oh, hey, here's a good question. I can't see anything. Cassie, am I good to answer some questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, here's one from someone at UHC. Cool. She said, regarding the client that was suicidal and wanted to go to another 24-hour, doesn't this encourage her behaviors? Now she will know that if she acts out, she can go to yet another 24-hour placement. Would it be spiraling continuance of behaviors which are enabled? Here's why not. Changing 24-hour placements is not instant. So in order for her to move, it could be, I mean, she's going to be the lowest priority because she's not in the hospital. So the transfer would have to take weeks, sometimes longer. I've had clients on a transfer list for different reasons, like, you know, their support system is in the East Valley and they're currently in Goodyear, and it's weeks, sometimes months before they are allowed to transfer. And so because of that, like, the implementation of the skills has to continue. If it was instantaneous and she got instant gratification, yes, it could be enabling, but it's not. Let me see here. Hey, Julie, thank you. That's cute. She said I'm a gym. That's really nice. I'm glad you guys like this. It's a fun topic. Scrolling. How willing are insurance companies to pay for this kind of extended time in 24-hour residentials? Oh yeah. So the average length of stay in our program is currently, I think, 5 to 8 months pre-COVID. Post-COVID, it's much longer. And the reason being, the step downs are not as open right now. There's been a lot of slowdown. As you can imagine, everything else is slowed down. A lot of people are working from home, so things are just slower. Every client that comes into 24-hour has to have an authorization, and then much like the hospital setting, and then we have to prove medical necessity for ongoing care. For my agency, I'm that person, and so I meet individually with all 80, soon to be 100 of our clients, and like figure out where they're at in their process of either stepping down or staying in. When there are no other outside sources available, like no step down options, then the insurance ultimately keeps them with us more for a continuity of care. Let me see here. Did the suicidal client build on their reading skills to other coping skills? Hey, good question. So she actually, yes, the answer is yes. She has a safety plan. Any of our clients that have any SI or HI history or behaviors have safety plans. And so I actually had the client go over her safety plan again. And then the therapist, who's actually my intern now, is updating it to involve other coping skills as well. So yes, we definitely want more than one coping skill. We need lots of tools in our toolbox. Georgia said that this reminds her when she was in preschool. I'm sorry, reminds her when she was teaching preschool. The parameters of like milieu therapy and understanding that every action is like observable and that we can be so intentional in our interaction is a really simple perspective, but I think it's important that we remember it for sure. Every moment is part of the therapy. Yes, you are so right. What are the parameters of the client's diagnoses? I think you mean in my agency at Alliance Behavioral Care. They're all SMI. So the majority of our clients are like schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia. I do have some bipolar and major depressive disorder. Those would be the, and we, obviously we also take clients that have personality diagnoses as well. Are there age or other requirements? Yes, I work with adults only, which here in Arizona, it's 18. Yeah. How can cohesion be used in a therapeutic group by a BHT? Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so let's see. Let's go back. I was going to show you I'm looking back at that schedule from the inpatient thing. So, well, you know what? I'm not going to scroll back there. I'll use my work. So the BHTs run our groups at work. So one of the groups we run is communication skills. And so that's a fantastic time for the BHT to model appropriate communication skills within the group, and then to also help the clients engage with one another. So something like creating that cohesion, it can be as simple as like, I call on Jimmy, and then Jimmy responds, and I say, hey, Joe, like, how did you feel about what Jimmy said right now? Or I know, Joe, last week that you did exactly what Jimmy just said. So it sounds like you both have the same skill that you're using. Just making sure to help connect the clients so that they create that cohesion. Same as like I told you that one house of ours that they all did they did Christmas for each other. That's so cool because every Christmas we as an agency purchase Christmas gifts for the clients. It's part of our annual budget that we put out. And this was the first time we've ever had the clients buy them for each other. And so there's like a whole group that we do where we talk about like Christmas and wants for Christmas and like what that looks like. And like we tell them like, this is our budget. So this is what we're looking at to get you. And then like how cool, like it created cohesion as the members talked about what they wanted, that then they got it for each other. So that's another way. How would you recommend someone influence real culture change in the staff and therefore the community change in a community if they are not a supervisor? I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but if you are, I'll give you two perspectives. If you're the BHT that wants to make the change, taking leadership, taking charge, showing up. If I go to work every day in sweatpants and a t-shirt, my staff will start wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. Like that absolutely happens. If I dress up every day, my staff will absolutely start dressing up every day. And so even if you're not the supervisor, just leading by example. If you're the therapist, so you don't work on the unit maybe, but you're a therapist, show them. So kind of like in the example I gave at the beginning, where if I were to walk on the inpatient unit, like how could I present myself in such a way to be open and willing to discuss things? In my current role, when I would go on the inpatient units, I would be looking for a specific client, but if other clients talked to me, I absolutely allowed them to engage in conversation. I mean, as long as it was reasonable, and just encouraging the other BHTs to do that as well. I work in an acute setting and would love to hear something in the future on how to help these clients with coping skills as this MT could be more challenging. Yeah, totally. Um, Absolutely agree. That would be wonderful. I hope I can read this. Just personal experience. Don't give up, even when the client is repeatedly admitted for the same thing. Yeah. It's going to take that one compliment, action, or observation that will one day change the client's behavior and outlook. Hey, Eric, you are absolutely right, man. 100%. 100%. Do you know, in our agency, I have a rule, and that rule is that we believe in second chances. And so sometimes I'll admit a client again, and the staff will go, oh, Shelby, we just had this client. And I said, yeah, but I believe in second chances, don't you? Because you never know. Like maybe they weren't successful at Gilbert 1, but they're going to rock it out at Gilbert 4. You never know. Second chances are worth it. Awesome. Thank you guys. I think that's everybody's questions. I appreciate you guys so much and just engaging so much. But I think that's it. Unless anyone has any other questions that I could answer. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I will wrap up. I've got a lot of thank yous, a lot of compliments. Thank you so much, Shelby. This was awesome. We'll leave your
Thank you.
information up here for another minute for anyone else who wants to jot it down. Once again, as a reminder, Aurora is here 24/7 for anyone who needs us. Inpatient, outpatient, you can always contact us if you have any questions about, any of the programs that we offer. As far as the CEUs and the presentation, and recordings go, and we do our best, like I mentioned earlier, to get everything shared within the week. I will put my contact information in the chat box here, just in case anyone doesn't have it. I recommend adding me to your contact list. Sometimes our emails come in encrypted. In that case, you have to create just like a little password and enter your email, basically just to ensure that the email is making it to who it needs to go to. But otherwise, that being said, look out for an email from me within the week. And thank you again so much, Shelby. This was awesome.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, guys.